today we have Michael who chair, then one of my church CG mate, Sean. Okay, so this is a long list of Sean CG mates come here to speak. He's on his way. He's reaching soon lah. Okay, so Michael will share first, and then we have him. Okay, so we will start with prayer, and then we'll begin. Okay, dear God, we thank you, Lord, for this morning. We pray, Lord, that as we come here, Lord, there may be not that many participants, but Lord, all the same, Lord, you are dear. Each of us is dear to you. We also pray for those who is watching this on Zoom, and also for those who will be watching this on a recording, Lord, that you will bless their lives through these sharings by Michael and Sean. So Lord, we look forward to this. May you open our hearts and minds, Lord, to what you are going to say through them. So with that, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, so nice to meet you all. My name is Michael. So I work together with Sean at GCF Singapore. So yeah, this is the last session of C2C, right? And we talk about family. So I think you all have received the handout, right? You can refer to that later on. Sean asked me to actually share about myself, about my experience and with my family. And so to bring across the message that we want to share in this session about family. So just to introduce you all about my family a little bit. So I came from an all boys family. So this is me and my siblings when we were very young. So we were all 4 boys. And these are my parents, my dad, my mom, and with 2 of us. The reason why we were there because me and my younger brother is only 10 months apart. That's why our memories, I mean, my memories will always have him, my younger brother, because we were like so close, right? And this is the latest one, like my parents, my siblings, as well as the 2 daughters-in-law. So only 2 of us got married for now. So this is my wife, you can see here, and this is my sister-in-law. And this one currently is my family, right? Me, my wife, Cindy, and 2 children. The older one is Anaya. She's going to be 11 this year. And this is Azariah. He's going to be 6 this year. And so I want to begin with this, I think, idiom or notion that no man is an island. We all know about this. But I think especially with regard to family influence, no man is an island. And I think sometimes family influence is actually bigger or greater than more than what we would like to acknowledge. Sometimes we think that, oh, my dad is like that, my parents are like that, I will be a different person. Right? That's what we thought. But apparently not that easy. Why? First, because we share the genes that made them behave, I mean, partially, made them behave the way our parents do, right? So I'm sharing you this picture. This is actually a picture of me and my children. So this is my daughter, right? When she was a few months old. Then this is my son. Huh? Oh, okay. I need to point it. Yeah. So this is my daughter, all right, AGK and Anaya. And then this is my son, and this is me. Hi. So I mean, in case you don't notice, I mean, you can tell a bit of a lot of similarities between 3 of us because we share some genes. But secondly, children also learn by imitating, right? And children, when they were born, they absorb everything like sponge. So the first few people whom they notice, whom they imitate, will be the parents or the family members. And then our parents also imitate their parents, and so on and so forth, right? So you realize it or not, actually, yeah, whatever runs in the family, right? We also share it, whether we like it or not. We are influenced, or at least we are influenced by it, we like it or not. So let me share you another Another photo. This is my dad. And this is my daughter. My dad likes to go fishing. It's his passion. All right. I also like fishing, but I'm not that passionate about fishing compared to him. I have another passion, which is cycling. Glenn also has a passion in cycling. But I'm very, sorry? Yeah. So I'm so passionate about cycling. At one time, I cycled 300 kilometers to Malaysia and back in one day. And by now, I have done it not only once, but twice. Right. So what I want to share is, although we have different hobbies, my dad and I, but I can acknowledge that our family, even my siblings, we are a bunch of passionate people. When we are passionate about something, we will like go all out for it. Right? Can be good, can be bad. I mean, let me share you one experience. When I was still in primary 4 or 5, my dad went out fishing. So at the time, our family lived in Bali, Indonesia. And so it's very easy to go out fishing, right? Because Bali is like surrounded by ocean. So my dad usually will go out fishing overnight, you know, like once a month kind of thing for him. It's a once a month kind of ritual for him. But there was one time he went out for fishing and he didn't return for 2 days. And we all started to get worried. And that time there was no handphone, no mobile phone. So we don't know what happened. He was like in the middle of ocean. We don't know where. Then he suddenly just came back on the 3rd day, like Jesus like that. Well, he said the motor boat, the motor for the boat was dead. So they were stuck in the middle of the ocean and they had to wait for another ship, for another boat to come from another island, returning to Bali. Yeah, and that's how he was actually safe. Finally returned to the main island. Yeah. And sometimes these hobbies of ours, whether it's my dad or myself or my siblings, actually cause us to run into problem in the family. I mean, of course, our wives, our spouses, sometimes not too happy about it. You know, but my dad would just push his own way, right? No matter what he wants to do, he just do it, right? And I learned that, and I thought, you know, oh, I will not become like that when I become an adult. But apparently, well, not really. As I said, when we are passionate about something, we go all out. Yeah, and sometimes I have to be honest with you. I mean, I ran into trouble with my wife because of my hobby, right? Yeah, but of course, I mean, as Christians, we believe all is not lost. I mean, the verse from Romans 5 verse 8 say, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. So that means, I mean, we are not helpless or hopeless because of Christ, right? And just a little bit background about my family. My father came from a non-Christian background, so his family was not Christian. So he only became a Christian when he met my mom. So he was baptized when he met my mom, and then when I was born, they were already Christians, both my mom and dad. But my father was relatively a young believer at the time because he was new to the faith. In fact, his entire family was new to the faith. I mean, his parents, I mean, my grandparents would later on be baptized as well. But he came from a very, I would say, a typical boomers Chinese traditional family. And my grandfather actually came from the mainland China. He came from the mainland China. And so, yeah, you can say that he's as cold as it could be, you know, as a man to his family. So he just worked, earn money for his family. I'm talking about my grandpa, but he didn't really have a very close relationship with his family, including his children and his wife. You know, and my father, had a lot of bitterness in his family. I mean, with his parents and all. Number one, I think my grandparents, they have a tendency to have favoritism, right? My father came from a family of 5 siblings, right? And he's the second one. So my grandparents, my grandpa had two favorite children, and my grandma also had other 2 favorite children. And my father happened not to be in either of them. So he had a lot of bitterness, and there was this episode. Okay, let's keep it among us. Okay, there was one time. My dad was dragged by my grandpa to the police station because he was accused of stealing my grandfather's watch. So my grandfather dragged my father to the police station, to scare. I think he was like only 11 or 12 years old only. And can you imagine, the kind of trauma my dad was having at that time? And so I think he grew up with all of this bitterness. And sometimes, my father would actually so-called treat us, me and my siblings, almost the same way. He's a bit cold, a bit distant to the children. And sometimes I'm wondering, whether, hey, does Papa really love us or not, right? But my mom then tried to explain. I think we need to understand him. We shouldn't just accuse him, or assume things about him. We try to understand him because of his background. And so finally, when my dad and then both my mom and dad became Christians, thankfully, my siblings and I, we were raised in a Christian family. So in fact, when I was just born, my parents already brought me to the church. And the reason why I show you this picture, because every time I see this picture, I ask my mom, "Mom, why do you bring me to church at such age?" Because at that time, there's no infant care, right? So my mom would just put me in one of the Sunday school room and then just leave me, hanging around there. My mom would just say, "Because it's good for you." So I let you hang out with the children in the Sunday school because it's good for you. But probably to me, it's like, wow, such a troublesome Sunday, right? Because I have to go Sunday school. Actually, I've been going to Sunday school, to church, like every day, okay? Every day, single day of my life since I was born. My parents would bring me to the church. No absence. Right. And I think little did I know that actually it impacted my life a lot. So when I arrived in Singapore, I came to Singapore in year 2000 for uni, and I didn't have anyone, no family, no friends in Singapore. And so unconsciously, the first thing I tried to look for is actually a community, and I tried to look for a Christian community. So that's where I met my small group in CF. This is my first small group in CF in NTU, right? This is our Bible study group. That's my first Bible study group in NTU, right? And then after that, I get to know more people, and these are the bunch of people whom I know since CF days, right? So we just met and had dinner last week during the Holy Week, right? So unconsciously, like I had this, I would say, like instinct, like, to find a so-called family. Although I'm far away from my birth family, but I try to find a family even here when I'm in Singapore by myself. And I'm thankful that God gave me such a family. And of course, this one is the staff workers in FES from the Indonesian ministry with whom I was serving for 12 years, right? And of course, this one is my pastor, who has been like almost like a spiritual senior to me, right? And yeah, so I'm really thankful that, all in all, if I can summarize my story, right, it all came to full circle is that yes, we are related and influenced greatly by our family, including and especially our parents, but we are not necessarily defined by them, right, by who they are. In fact, I believe that we are called to transform our family. It's like we can choose to be bitter, right? We can choose to be bitter about how our parents treat us or how our family treats us. Like blaming our family, blaming our parents, or even blaming God for giving us such a family. But on the other hand, I think we can come to the Lord and say, Lord, I know my family is a bit messy. I came from a messy family, but I want to bring it to you for restoration and for reconciliation. And in fact, I believe that God wants us to be the agent of the peace and reconciliation in our family. And just want to give you one example. My father was a smoker for a very long time, like almost since his teenage, 14, 15, until his 50s. He stopped for a while, I think, when my siblings and I were in primary school. But after that, he actually worked in a factory. So I think he picked up his habit again when he was in the factory. So but by that time he was already a Christian, right? So I didn't have any agenda, like to force him to quit his smoking. I mean, come on, he's been doing that for many decades in his life, right? So one day, after I started working in Singapore, sometimes I go back to Indonesia for holidays. So one day I have a one-to-one, like sitting just right next to my dad, and I just spoke to him. And not long before that, one of my mom's brother just passed away from lung cancer. So I just shared, actually, unknowing, we may not know, but actually lung cancer is one of the biggest cause of premature death for men. All right. So I didn't have any agenda, like to force him or anything, but I told him that I'm sharing this because we are just concerned about you. So that's it, Then after that, I came back to Singapore. Then not long after that, my mom suddenly called me. Then she told me that, hey, your dad has stopped smoking. Just like that, cold turkey, just stopped smoking. And he never smoked at all after that. So sometimes we take it for granted, Number one, we take for granted the fact that our family influenced us so much. But number two, maybe we also take for granted, right? Our status in the family, whether as children or parents, can actually bring blessings to our family. So I think at the end of the day, I think number one, we need to change our attitude, right? When I got married, I realized that having your own family actually gives you a healthy boundary between yourself and your parents, right? And I come to appreciate the struggles of being parents. My dad used to be like very short fused with us, right? All boys, always scold us and sometimes beat us. I was wondering, how come we're like so easily angered one? Then when I become parents, then I know, wow, when I see my children make a mess, I also got very, ticked off, And hopefully, I think with that, we understand more about our parents' struggle. So number one, we become more grateful of our parents. Hey, yeah, man, with all their weaknesses, with all their maybe bad habits, our parents, they are not perfect, right? But they have been used by God as a channel to actually raise us up, to bring us up. That's number one. And number two, we get to become more gracious towards them. Or in other words, we can become more forgiving to them, understanding their struggles and so on. And I want to add one more point. Having children, right, actually help you build another bridge with your parents. Because your parents, after a while, might get sick of you, wow, they have known you for many decades, 30, 40, 30 years or more. Maybe they come, you visit them during holidays, you visit them every weekend, okay, But once you have children, right, wow, they will cherish your children. But I mean, of course, they will want to meet the children more than they would want to meet you as, as their children. But you know what? It helps us build a bridge with them. I mean, you can strike more conversation. You can relate more with them, and so on and so forth. So I think just all in all, let me end my sharing today. I think my experience with my family, and also, of course, with God's grace, I think helped me want to strive to be a better version of myself, rather than my parents. Sometimes, as I shared with you, when I look at my parents, or especially my dad, I always say, hey, I want to be better than that. But I found out that, it's not easy because we share similar genes. So we have a similar tendency. But no, I think God wants us not just to be, keep comparing ourselves to our parents, but we should actually strive to be a better person than we are, rather than our parents. Yeah, so that's all I have for my sharing. Sean? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So another Sean is here. Yeah.
The Google one.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Hi guys, so this is Sean Tan. Sean Tan is from BCM, an alumni also from Aki. Now he's still an Aki. Yeah, so he's my CG mate when I first joined the church, but then he has been called out to split and multiply. So he's now leading a CG of younger people like me, Poly, and okay. So with that, I welcome him to share more of himself.
Okay. Hi everyone. Thanks. Yeah. So I mean, I think first I should qualify that I wasn't super prepared, I guess. So I didn't like have a rehearsed kind of presentation. It won't be like super polished and stuff. But I think yeah, I think I would just do it as a more casual kind of sharing, so not as formal and stuff lah. So okay, I think short intro, I guess I've been working for a while, and I think this course that Sean is doing is kind of for, I guess, students going out into the working world and trying to deal with some of the issues that that's important lah. And I think one of them that changes as you go out into the working world is how we think about family. Yeah. So throughout, I think this is what I'll cover kind of throughout the whole presentation. So some background context, my reflections, and some things that I would like to post lah. Yeah, and I think it's quite something to note also, that the topic of family is quite a personal one, and it might differ from person to person lah. So today's sharing is kind of based on like my own context, and also I will I'll share some stories and reflections and questions that help me reflect along the way lah, as I go through this thing. So some background and context. This is me and my family and my brother, quite a standard family of four kind of thing. Yeah, so my dad kind of met my mom while he was working in Brunei. My mom is not Christian, and my dad now, I guess, is kind of fallen away. We are a family of four. We moved back. We moved into our grandmother's house, and I had an aunt living with us at the time. I mean, I still have. Yeah. So, oh, sorry, there's a bit of a repeat, but yeah. So, yeah, I would say that my parents gave us a quite wonderful childhood. We didn't really lack anything. Tuition, you want, you give, toys, whatever, PS3, whatever, all you have. But I think looking back, there were probably some telltale signs that that there could have been issues as we as an adult looking back. Yeah. So some of these I think were problems that would arise from, say, being unequally yoked and about living with your in-laws and aunts, which had a lot more other complexities. So, okay, yeah. So I think I started to think about family and what it meant for me as I kind of grew older, and realized that my role in the family started changing. So I guess it's quite standard for most Singaporeans. I think this should be quite relatable. So when I was a child, it's kind of carefree, sheltered, and you were dependent. So you basically didn't really have to think about much except studying, I guess. And life was pretty much dictated. So your parents want you to go where, do what CCA, wear what, or whatever. Most of the time, I mean, I was quite kiang, so most of the time, I obeyed. Yeah, I think I was quite thankful that my dad also, or rather my uncle pushed my dad to bring us to Sunday school. So yeah, so that was a child. And then at the teenage years, I think coming out from a fairly kind of comfortable upbringing, it was kind of, how I say, quite self-centered, focusing on myself, trying to like find out who I was, who I want to be. But along the way, I knew like there were some cracks that were developing in the family. Some issues like whenever there's a big quarrel, then there'll be this weird like family meeting kind of thing with all my aunties and uncles. And then like, of course, as a kid, my parents were quite nice to shelter us from it all. So we were told to like go in the room, that kind of thing. But we obviously knew there was something happening, and yeah, it's just sheltered. And then we were quite worried, but everything after that seems fine. So life went on. And yeah, then there was, I think there was, yeah. So a lot of cracks were also issues that dealt with my mom and my aunt and sharing a household and not having that kind of like control or agency over certain things and so that kind of clashes. So we have like 2 washing machines, 3 fridges, that kind of nonsense yeah, it's quite a ridiculous thing, but yeah, and this still happens till today this clash between my auntie and my mom, and also my dad as the one in the middle, how he navigates that kind of issue, which is quite difficult. And also it's further exacerbated by how my mom's from Brunei, so her support system or all her what did I say, her relatives are, I mean her siblings are not here so she was kind of isolated and alone. Yeah, and I think also one thing that my aunt held quite strongly against my mom is that she's not Christian, and my aunt is Christian. So she was like, oh, see because you're not like that, that's why you're like that kind of thing, which I mean ultimately is not the most edifying thing, but also it affects how my mom felt about her position and place in the family. Yeah, so oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, so my mom is not, so my dad is a graduate and was working in a petrochem place as an accountant. Then my mom was like only up to secondary school, so she was a homemaker. So yeah, all the support system, friends, peer groups, everything all quite different. Culturally also different because in Brunei, I don't know whether you all know, it's like huge spaces. Then like you can run around and like cars are like 11 cars, that kind of stuff. Can go anywhere. yeah, then and yeah, it's just big. Then okay, so then when I went to university, I lived on campus, so I was largely mostly away from home, and I was super caught up with architecture school. So this idea of like family was kind of a bit outside my attention, yeah, and then yeah, it was hard lah. So I kind of put it aside, and then after graduating and starting work, and returning home, I guess I took on this. I wanted to take on this idea that I would wait and see what's happening lah. Because I realized, I mean, even when I was staying in school, like on and off, I would go back, and then I realized that my brother and the way that he interacts with my parents also a bit different lah. So but I didn't know what was happening, so I didn't really kind of comment and stuff. Uh, and then when I returned home and started observing, and I realized that there was something different about the whole thing lah. I think also during the university stage, there was this big event which I guess wasn't very expected. So in uni, going into uni, I was like, oh yeah, everything's settled and I can go pursue my passions and stuff. And but actually halfway through, my dad suddenly like called for a family meeting again, and all of the and kind of announced that he like, okay, I mean this is my reading, but he might be brought to bankruptcy because he took on some loans and stuff. So then at that point was quite devastating for me, because suddenly the whole outlook and stuff changed lah. And like, I guess I needed to take what I was doing a bit more seriously and not like screw up in uni. So yeah, and I think that changed the family dynamic a lot actually. And for him himself, up to today, I think he is still kind of trying to find out like how to move forward. And yeah, I'll share more later on my thoughts on all these things. And also then I think now after a few years in working, I also realized that the roles are changing. So I think yeah, as you can see, I think most of you will relate. So when you're a child, and then when now you're like kind of growing into this, taking the lead of where should the family go, and it might not be like financially, but it might be like responsibility, and also like setting the direction now. Because I don't know, when I feel that when people start retiring, they kind of just want to chillax and stuff. They don't really care so much about other things. Okay, so I think the first point that I wanna make, I guess, is about realizing this bag we carry lah. Or the first thing that I learned, I think I grew to learn this point quite late in my life lah. And after observing the comings and goings of my family and reflecting on my own interactions with my aunt. So I think for me, I always held some kind of grudge against my aunt, like a kind of bit. I realized that because I felt that she was kind of the reason that why there were so many quarrels and stuff in my family lah. And I realized after a while that it kind of took a bitter root in my life, in the way that I viewed her, and the way that I interacted with her lah. So I was reading this book actually that kind of had this concept. So what basically this concept is that everyone has a bag that we drag along there's a result of all, I think something like what Michael said, like result of all our experiences, and that shaped us, that help us think, that make us feel what we feel and stuff like that. Like basically our own personal stories. And if we don't recognize that, right, there is a tendency to kind of how to say, to kind of like be unaware of all these things and shape how we interact with each other, and also how we perceive each other, like this kind of assumptions that we have about other people. So I think once we are aware, once I was aware of this, then I took on a more patient and kind of loving stance lah. I mean, to illustrate this point, I guess, like my aunt is kind of eccentric. She's the kind that will make demands like, oh, you buy me lunch today, that kind of thing, because it's too hot for me to go out and buy. And then she wants a very specific kind of like lunch meal, like, oh, I want chicken rice, but with white rice only. If no white rice there, I don't want the rice. Then like must be Thai meat and that kind of stuff. Just very demanding overall. And yeah, she cannot go out and do stuff on her own. She cannot eat alone, whatever. Basically, yeah, that kind of thing. And so that put on a huge weight for the family, my mom and because my mom cooks for the family also. And then she will complain it's too salty, too unhealthy, too oily, whatever lah. A lot of this. And then my dad has to kind of navigate this as his, I don't know, it's quite hard for him because he is kind of like her brother, but also the husband of this guy. And I think up to now, he still hasn't found out how to deal with it properly. But yeah, so I think that is one thing that I realized, and I realized how the different members in our family were also interacting with her and each other. And then once I understood that, I could better communicate and understand them. So I think this first point is under this idea of knowing. Yeah, and then I think the second thing that I want to share is about talking about us. So I think in the traditional Asian family, right, we always don't talk about like family or like where are we going, what we want to do, that kind of stuff. So there's very little open communication. Everything is kind of assumed like, oh, you're the kids, you listen to the parents, and then everything just goes on like what the traditional Singaporean family would look like. But I think after moving on and realizing my role in the family, I tried to take a kind of initiative to sit my parents down and talk to them about like, hey, so where are we going? What do we want our family to look like? Because I mean, after he kind of retired and then started trying to find ways to fill up his time, there was kind of a void in the leadership kind of the family and stuff. So and also like yeah, like when my brother graduated and left to Hong Kong, then like we have to arrange a lot of this kind of family stuff, like where do you go for a family dinner, who to invite, are we going to take the graduation photos, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and like how to keep up this family unit because he kind of almost became very passive, and my brother and I would have to initiate these things. Yeah, so I think that was quite, for me, I think this was quite insightful thing for us, because we could also hear from our parents what, okay, I didn't do it with my brother because my brother is kind of still like resentful, but I did it with my parents and kind of hear where their thoughts lie and where their hearts lie. I think very rare in an Asian family to be very open such as this. And I don't think my parents are that open. I had to keep prodding them and stuff. Yeah, but I think it's also a way for us to sow and speak into our family, and at the same time to be vulnerable to them also. Yeah, so it's kind of be aligned on expectations and stuff like that. Yeah, and I think the third one is about being the change you want to be. So I think we all recognize and agree that okay, because I mean my family is, I can't say it's the most Christian family, but I took on this quite a resentful mindset that like, oh, my dad failed at his role of being the leader and stuff, and like even though he was more than qualified, and then he wasn't like he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do and I kept trying to point out all the flaws in him and what he's doing and his way of thinking, way of communicating. Because my dad, like any traditional Asian dad, would first respond by like, every time you talk to him, he was like, no, let me tell you, that kind of stuff, like dismiss you immediately. And also, yeah, it's just it's just very the 大男人 or the big man kind of vibe. And as the role changed, we kind of need to help to explain that, yeah, dad, you're now retired and all that kind of stuff. So after thinking about this, I think that I realized also from praying about it, from reflecting on where I stood in my family, that it's not just about this idea of fixing the family, but also discovering of where each other was in life, what they thought. Because I guess communication is not very common in my family also. So that was something that we had to work on, and discovery of how God's grace would act and be manifested in the family. So I think, and I think this was only possible through being very mindful of my own actions, and if this were to ever go anywhere, it would have to start somewhere, and hopefully it will be from me and my brother, who are I guess the more regular Christians. Yeah. So yeah, and I think always to never forget to stop praying for it, because people are complicated, and yeah, it takes decades when family is involved and things are already so entrenched. So I don't know, just sharing some stuff that maybe we could think about, or actionables moving forward. So I think we only have like one blood family. We cannot really choose it. So we should, something like what Michael shared at the end, we should try and make the most out of it. And I think some things to think about and ask yourself as you move into working life, like what's your role in your family, where do you stand? And also, how have you been acting in and around your family? How do you pray for your family, and how can you pray for? And how can you pray together? And then maybe you can say something nice and affirming to your family, which is quite rare. So I guess, yeah, that's it from me.
Because nobody ever asked us questions. The small group this question. We will do Q&A now. Don't need formal lah. Like that formal. Okay, please fire. It's not easy to talk about family, so not so easy to think of questions about the family. So maybe if you're stuck, you just think about in the future, okay, when you think about moving on family, maybe that will be a little bit more motivating. Secondly, it's also that maybe they are just observations that you make of family, and then you wonder what is the better response and what. Okay, of course they're not expert in anything, because you're the expert in family, but maybe just some confidence booster. Okay. Let's go.
Yeah. So you talk about having healthy boundaries. How do we have, so what are healthy boundaries?
Yeah, I think I especially mentioned that in the context of my own marriage. So in the sense that after I got married, I think there needs to be a healthy boundary in the sense that for me and my wife it's easy because our family, both sides are all back in Indonesia and we are here, right? So if they want to visit us, they can, right? But they can't stay here forever. Then vice versa, we can visit them once in a while, but not forever. Yeah, because I mean, I can share this from my own experience and observation. Some of my brother, sister-in-law actually stay with the parents, together after they got married. And actually, it put a strain on the family relationship, especially with between the husband and wife. Because you imagine that there are two heads in the family, the husband, and then also the father-in-law, for example. And then you also have two heads in the kitchen, the wife and the mother-in-law. So it can be straining to the relationship in a sense. And also, some parents are very well-meaning. They want to support the children even in their marriage. They want to give good advice, but after a while, right, it's just unavoidable, then one will try to interfere with the other. Yeah, so I think having the healthy boundaries, I think, is good, especially in the context of marriage. That's for certain. And secondly, I think in the context of adulthood, I don't know about your family, but probably I think after a certain age, you might want to consider staying outside of your parents' house. Yeah, after a certain age lah. Yeah, I know that these days people get married a bit late, right? In their 30s something, or late 20s. So this is just a suggestion, if possible at all for you. I know that sometimes we also have aging parents have difficulties in their physical mobilities, in their health. So I think that's another challenge lah. But let's say your parents are still healthy, they have no issue in mobility, you might want to consider staying outside of the parents' house. Yeah. Because it helps you to be more independent. Yeah, helps you to be more independent, right? And also train you to prepare in a sense that one day your parents also will not be with you anymore, for whatever kind of reason. Yeah. But of course, I'm not saying that, as a single, it's bad to be with your parents. No, that's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But for married couple, definitely yes. Better get out of your parents' house. Yeah, I'm serious. That's what the Bible says, right? Therefore, a man shall become one and be married to a wife and leave their parents. Right? But they cling on to each other, like husband and wife. Yeah.
So like what same thing, like what are the boundaries that you try to set, and like having this multi-generation household, I think it's very rare. Yeah, and how do you actually view? Because yeah, like what Michael said, there's a lot of people who actually feel that perhaps it's better to, especially for young married couples, like just probably that's the only way you can ever get happy about this move to a new country. So maybe a little bit more on like how have you tried making that, and what's maybe a little bit experience a bit and multi-generational something.
Yeah. Okay lah. I think. Healthy boundaries first. Okay, yeah, healthy boundaries. I think I'm quite lucky. My parents kind of let me do whatever I want. My grandma has passed, so it's just my aunt and my mom, dad, brother, and I. And my brother is now overseas for work, so the house is kind of smaller and smaller. So that's better, I guess. And I think the break away from the family during uni was quite good for me personally and to deal with, to start thinking about family and where my role was within the family. Because I think if you're in the household, the whole dynamic of it will continue shaping how you see your parents and stuff like that. But the time away kind of helps you to think about be more intentional about I'm gonna meet them for dinner on Saturday or something, and then what do I want to talk about and stuff like that, since you're only there for that one time, or when you come home, and then what you want that time home to be like now. So I think that was very helpful for me. Boundaries wise, I think there's a long time unspoken rule in my okay, I'm quite privileged that my house is a house, a landed house. And but my family has always only taken like 2 rooms, my mom and dad 1 room, and my brother and I 1 room. Then the rest of the house is kind of like no one crosses that boundary kind of thing. So physically it's kind of separated. And when I was younger, I loved that. I didn't want to have anything to do with my aunts and aunties. I was actually very resentful with all of them. Oh no, it's not super big like Sean Muliani, but but it's okay lah. There's a it's a landed. It's a landed, and there's like 2-ish living rooms. So like the front of the house is like my auntie's, then the back is like ours, kind of thing lah. It's not super big. There's still common toilets and stuff. It's not en suites and everything. And of course the kitchen will be like my mom's domain and stuff. So when my grandmother was around, that was actually where a lot of the issues came about, because my grandmother naturally will also have some kind of domain in the kitchen, and then the aunts would come over and like, oh, grandma used to do it this way, this plate is grandma's, like don't throw it away, that kind of stuff. And then like it kind of got quite crazy for my mom, because they would even check like the rubbish that she threw away and stuff like that. It was very, very strange. But I mean, I think when people grow older, some of those, like they got not so much energy to do all these things also lah. So I think boundaries wise, I guess that's where it's at for them. I mean, my mom and my aunt still have this kind of weird like avoidance kind of thing. But I think now, like last time there was a lot of head-on clashes. Now it's more like, she's like that kind of thing. And I guess when my aunt grows a bit older and more frail, then my mom also like let her be. But I mean, I also think it's very, very crazy, because my aunt always mumbles stuff, and it's just, you just have to let live lah. I think, yeah. So I think that's that. Then actually the boundaries aren't very clear, but it's just an unspoken rule. No one talks. After dinner, you go back into your room. Yeah, and the space is kind of, no one goes there. Then moving on, I think, because I guess I'm just newly engaged and gonna think about what's next, right? Definitely, after my experience, I agree that the Bible's advice of leave and cleave is so true. But I think in the Singaporean context, where we kind of have to this long BTO 7-year wait, that kind of nonsense, we have to think about it lah, and rent is ever increasing, like 2K plus for apartments. Quite crazy for a fresh grad, I think. And so we did have some issues. We did have some considerations about that, but I think Sian and Sian's my fiance, but I have kind of decided that it's worthwhile to like rent for a while. I think I heard from friends also that after leaving the household, it's quite beneficial for your relationship with your parents, with that separation, the physical separation. And I guess it's also a bit about being more intentional about time and stuff. I think does that answer the question? I mean, sorry, just to add. Also when I see, because I go over to Sian's place quite often. So I see like okay lah, in my view, it's a proper functioning, good, nice Christian family. And then I was like, wow, see, if only it could be like that kind of thing. And then at the start, I always had this resentment against my father. It's like, hey, why you see lah, you do this, that kind of thing, then this is what we get, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, we are also called to be agents of like what I shared just now. So hopefully we can bring God's peace and restoration to the family. And I mean, when you get married, it's also you're kind of like combining two families or bringing two families together, and hopefully that can rub off each other and stuff. I mean, that's where I'm thinking about it currently. Why are you so skeptical?
It's the observations from running this for some of these things are your generally when we will tell you, unless a lot of the especially family this topic, okay, it's quite a hard topic to talk about actually. This is the second time we are doing this topic in C2C. And every time we do it, we're like, "Hey, what to say?" Okay, but thank you so much for sharing, genuinely. When you think about your family, we hope that your family is great. But not all family is great. And even the great family also can run into troubles. Okay, so we hope that along the way, 2-3 years down the road, some of these things become more real. And when you remember us, you will remember why we mentioned this, why is it so important. Okay, with that, we will just talk a small group for a while. And then we'll eat lunch. Okay, we will give you all 20 minutes and then we'll go for lunch. I need to share the details for the retreat. Because you always have a retreat at the end of 4 or 5 sessions of C2C. 4. So this coming one will be on 21st May. Okay, please save the date. We are going to DTC, which is somewhere near Novena, with a 20-minute walk. No choice. Okay, and we're gonna we hold a whole day from like 9 o'clock until like 3:30. Okay, we are going to go gardening. Okay, we'll garden for 2 hours. Okay, it's not that hot, don't worry. I also don't think it will be that complicated, legit. I look at the garden, it's not bad, but it's not amazing. We are just gonna get our hands dirty, okay? There's a point why we are doing this, which you explain on that day, okay? And after that, around 12 o'clock, then until 3:30 will be the reflective part, okay? May not take until 3:30, but I'll just buffer until 3 o'clock.